All right, y'all, happy Thursday. This is going to be part 2 of 3 for the nutrition series in the Coach's Corner. And last week, actually a couple weeks back, we had talked about the fundamentals of nutrition and how we're breaking this down into a 3-part series because it's that important. And I wanted to chunk it up in 3 different parts just to make them both easily digestible, but also because they're totally different and we want to make sure that we're starting at the fundamentals until we get to the logistics. I think it's common that people gravitate more towards the what to do and not the core, the root, the underlying root cause rather than the symptoms. And then just like we do with medications, we begin trying to solve the symptoms like, is keto right for me? How many macros should I have? And this, that, and the other thing. And if we fail to address first our core beliefs around nutrition or anything for that matter, really, and then second, which is what we'll talk about today, our language are around this area, then the X's and O's, the execution isn't going to be sustainable, or it's not going to gain footing because we are not changing the internal mechanism which is causing the problem in the first place. It's why people who get lap band surgery or reconstructive surgery or liposuction, they gain the fat back because they didn't do the work to fix the behavior that got them there in the first place. They just went straight to the symptoms. So last week we talked about core beliefs. If you missed that one, please go back. It's on my YouTube channel. You can watch that full one. It's lengthy. It's in depth, but it is real. And I had a lot of people that resonated with it. And so today we're going to take it now to our language, which is equally, if not more important, because we are constantly communicating with ourselves every day by stories mostly, but also by these just little phrases that seem to keep us hung up. And so I want to start this series by just going into what I mean when I say language and stories, where this language and our stories come from, where's the origin. Usually it's childhood, but we can develop this over time. And then I want to focus on 2 patterns of language that we use that is both childhood patterns and then it's simply stories that we tell ourselves. And these are usually come in the form of just phrases. And gosh, when you hear me talk about this, you're going to hear it in yourself and in other people all the time. And you'll want to butt in and do the work of reconstructing that phrase. So let's dive in. Let's talk about language in our stories. What do I mean by that? So you've probably heard this said, the most important conversation and communication that you can have is the communication that you have with yourself. And this is so true. I mean, all day long, we are asking and answering questions. It's what we do. We ask ourselves questions, we answer them. And saying this out loud may feel like you're a crazy person, but just stop and think about that for a second and realize you can point to every single area of your life and realize that that's what you're doing. You're asking yourself a question and then your brain's going to automatically answer that. Whether it's a good answer is up in the air, and that's going to be really the fruit of that answer. You'll see it in what you either create or don't create, or your patterns or your habits, or just what you're constantly circulating in. So we can start this process by simply pausing, slowing down, and sometimes it's not always the answer that is the variable that should be adjusted. Sometimes we just need to ask ourselves better questions. Take out the sometimes. We need to start asking ourselves better questions. Better questions result in better answers. Better answers result in better actions. So that's language. That's the language piece at a very, very broad and macro perspective. Our stories is another thing. Our stories would be something like I never got enough food when I was younger, so I've just learned to eat everything when I can because I don't know, I grew up in a house where we never got enough food. And so now, every plate that's in front of me, I eat it. That's the story. And do we say it like this to ourselves all the time? No, but it's the story that you live with, that you're projecting, and you're making your decisions with that story, and it's become a belief. Kind of intertwining the last week's discussion about core beliefs, but this is a little bit different. And our stories would be things, and we'll go into stories in a moment when I throw out some very real examples. Thank you to my clients for giving me some examples on how they talk about nutrition when it comes to trying to create a change. And so this is what we're talking about. This is the language in your head. It's how you communicate to yourself, either about food, about your body, about food and your body, or just about your ability in general to make changes. See, we all do things, we act a certain way for a reason. We always have a reason. If you ask somebody why they do something, they're never going to tell you, "Oh, no reason." They'll probably say, "I don't know," if they don't know it, but there's always a reason. So where a language comes from. Well, I think we all know this by now. Most of our language, most of our stories that we begin forming happen at a very early age. It's in childhood. And we form these based on either what we've been told by our parents or what we either watched them communicate to themselves and we took that on. If you saw a mother or even a father who had an eating disorder and you watched them, you just observed how they picked around their food or avoided food or threw it out or over exercised or pinching their skin. You're already forming a certain language, or maybe you just heard them say all the time, "Oh, I'm so fat. Oh, I just feel so fat." How many mothers say that around their children? "I feel so fat today. I feel so bloated." These are the types of things that us parents, us adults have to be very, very, very conscious of, how we're communicating to ourselves around children, because they take that on and they don't realize that they are, but they do because they're mimickers. So we begin forming these language patterns at a very young age. But then the other part is, what your parents or kids at school or role models are saying to you. Like, are you going to eat all of that? Or you've gained some weight, haven't you? Or, the kids at school will be very, very brutal, and just straight up say, that you're fat or you're ugly or you're this or you're that. And if you heard that in the cafeteria, instantly in that moment, in that very moment, you're associating what you're eating, your food, how you're eating with "I'm fat" and all of these things. And our stories begin to form. It's like, this canvas, and people just start, spurting paint up there, and then we continue painting the picture. So this is important to know where these stories come from, where these language patterns come from. And then we continue them on. And they can happen in adulthood too. Now, let's be very clear. Childhood language patterns and then the stories that we communicate, while they are usually derived from the same origin, they begin to manifest and look very differently. I'll go into two different versions now. We will go into the childhood language, where we learn how to talk to ourselves about food or how we think about food. And then we're going to go into some very more direct phrases that one might say to themselves that is keeping them back or holding them back from creating change in the way that they eat, right? Because if you have a goal of weight loss or just body composition changes or anything, if you just want to start being more healthy, then there's obviously a change that needs to happen, because if you're desiring something different, then obviously a change needs to be made. And knowing what that change is not very hard. Making the change is another story. And besides all of the resistance that will inevitably come in whenever you try to make a change, because that is the nature of life, there's all of those old patterns, those old language patterns, those old ways of communicating, that old programming that we need to understand so we can start deconstructing and reconstructing the stories, the language, and the way that you're speaking to yourself. So awareness is the first key here. And sometimes you don't even need to know why. Sometimes it helps to understand where that comes from, if it's very deeply rooted, or if it's very, very self-sabotaging, like an eating disorder. That would be something that would be a case where you would want to understand where this is coming from. Where's the root? But someone who just continues to yo-yo and has excess weight, do we need to sit there and go all the way back and understand where did this come from? I'm not sure, case by case basis. But provided the tools from this video, I'm hoping you can begin doing some of this work by yourself and just pay attention, even if it's not in the area of nutrition, how you can shift the way that you speak to yourself. See, we all have an area of life, or multiple, hopefully multiple areas of life where we are very successful. We feel good. We feel confident there. And normally we feel confident in there because we have a feedback loop that's happening. And we're communicating to ourselves in a certain way that is driving a certain result that is working, and thus we become more confident. More confidence helps us shift and maintain that language. We speak to ourselves in a certain way. Taking the example of, let's just say, a high-level executive who is really, she's a salesperson, and she nails her sales call. What do you think she's going to communicate to herself when she's about ready to go into a sales call, when she's preparing for that? Probably something along the lines of, I'm going to crush this shit. I got this. I'm going to win this deal. I'm walking out of that office with a deal. Whatever it is, you can, same thing with me. When I go into an event or a speaking engagement or the gym, I'm thinking to myself, I got this. I own this. I know exactly what to do. I was made to be here. This is where I belong. I'm so excited for this. These are the things that I'm communicating to myself, and then I show up that way, and then that feedback loop continues to happen. So I'm communicating to myself that way. My actions align with my words, and then my actions feed my confidence level, which is just going to fuel my words over and over and over again. And that's why we see people that just, they are successful in that area over and over and over again. And so now, if there's an area of your life that you do not feel successful in, you need help. We all have an area like this. We all have an area like this. If you need help, if you need change, chances are it's because you're communicating to yourself in a way that is not allowing you to succeed or get that feedback loop. And it's a vicious cycle. Change your language, or change your thoughts, change your life. Okay, so let's go into the childhood language. Something like, and I mentioned this before, my mom said I was such a picky eater. My mom said I was such a picky eater. My mom said I've always been a picky eater. That's just the way I've always been. These are childhood language patterns that you're taking now into adulthood that say, I'm a picky eater. And so how would you like to act then? If your biggest need is to be congruent with that, with what you say, you're going to be a picky eater. Or how about this? I have to finish my plate. this belief that comes in the language of your mom telling you, finish your plate. You're not allowed to get up until you finish your plate. And so this mechanism of whatever's on my plate, I finish, gets put in place. Now, there are some deeper examples here in the realm of childhood language that I will actually save from this video, because I think the more common and detrimental language patterns are the ones that we're saying to ourselves all the time, and they're little snippets, and they're just small little phrases that like creep in, and they're always in the background, and you may hear them come out, but sometimes it takes some digging. So something I like to do with my clients is just ask a lot of questions, and you hear some very interesting things. And to me, it's very obvious why the change isn't happening when I hear things like this. I'm going to give you some examples of some phrases associated with food that I've either heard from clients directly, heard from other people directly, or ways in just I thought of as an example. So I can't eat that way. I hate cooking. I have to eat now. People say, I have to eat. I have to remind myself to eat. I eat like an asshole. Yes, I've heard this one before. I can't eat veggies. I hate them. I have to finish my plate. I don't eat leftovers. I despise cooking. Gosh, that is so extreme. I don't like being in the kitchen. I don't have time to eat. I can't eat because I'm not hungry. I always forget to eat. I've always been a picky eater. I can't meal prep. I don't have time to meal prep. I would continue, but all of these phrases are giving me depression and anxiety. All right, so we're going to break this down. Here is the most important part of this video if you're watching this far. These sentences, while they may not be yours, I am sure you can find yourself somewhere in one of these, whether it's with nutrition or not. And even if it has nothing to do with nutrition, no matter what area of life, it would serve you to pay attention to how we're going to do these next parts. First of all, if you really desire and you would like change in any area, you are saying things to yourself that are in line with this, that you can easily and simply flip. And I'm going to break one down for an example. We're going to do a process. So let's go through it. Let's take the phrase, I don't have time to eat. This is a very common one. Very common, and it's not as aggressive as I despise cooking. Okay, I don't have time to eat. So what you're going to do is, here's the process. In the area of nutrition, you're going to catch yourself saying some phrases like this. I don't have time to eat. I'm just not hungry. I hate vegetables, so I don't know how to eat healthy. I've eaten like this for years. Okay, whatever the phrase is, you're going to capture it. You're going to write it down. Write it down, pen and paper. Pen and paper, you're going to put ink to the pages, write the sentence down. And write it down 3 times if you need to. Write it down and then read it out loud to yourself. So step 1, write it down. Step 2, read it out loud to yourself. Step 3, sit there with it. So read it out loud. And then I want you to feel, what is the emotion that you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense is the feeling? Okay, if you need to rewind this, do it, but I'm going to repeat it. So you're going to write it down. You're going to read it out loud to yourself. And you're going to sit with it. Take a big breath. And ask yourself, what emotion do you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? And rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, so for me, I don't have time to eat. That makes me feel hopeless, a little bit anxious. I don't have time to eat. It makes me feel busy. Where do I feel it in my body? I would say in my stomach. I feel that in my stomach and in my back. Scale of 1 to 10, 8. It's a level 8. Okay, so that's not very good. And now what we're going to do, so you can write all of that down, right? Your emotion, where you feel it in scale of 1 to 10. Write that down. Then you're going to take this same sentence. And if we look at this sentence, it has some negatives in it. We're just going to take out the negatives. So I don't have time to eat. Let's take out the don't. I have time to eat. So you're going to rewrite that sentence and say it out loud. I have time to eat. How does that make you feel? What emotion? It makes me feel more expansive, like I have options. I have time to eat. Like I'm in charge type of mentality. I feel that in my chest, actually, in my heart. It makes me want to go. And that's probably a level 7, a 7 out of 10. Okay, much better. So then you can ask yourself, does that feel complete? If the answer is yes, you have a new phrase to repeat in your head. If the answer is no, we can break it down some more. And I see some room for improvement in this one. I have time to eat. That might not even be true though. So if that's not true for you, like if you don't feel like you have time, you might find yourself saying that's a lie. I don't have that much time. I'm always so busy, which is another sentence we could break down. I'm always so busy. But for the purposes of this video, we will keep it here. So let's say this, instead of have time to eat, let's say I make time to eat. I'm going to say I create time to eat. And then let's do this, because I create time to eat because I love my body and I fuel my vessel. Now we're going to read that one out loud. Okay, I create time to eat because I love my body and I fuel my vessel. That feels so good. And for me, what this sentence says is it puts the person or you in the driver's seat. And it also says like, hey, it's a reminder, you're important. And I have to just say a comment about this is that if you don't have time to eat, then we have bigger issues on our hands. And this is one that I hear a lot, guys. It's one that I hear very frequently. I just don't have time to eat. Okay, well, you need to eat to survive. And so if you literally don't have enough time in the day to fuel your body, the one that keeps you alive, then we got problems. Okay, so then you're going to say this out loud. Where do you feel it? What is the feeling? Rate it. And does this feel complete? And if the answer is yes, then this is your new mantra. Every time you catch yourself saying, I don't have time. Oh, I create time to eat because I love my body and I fuel my vessel. Do it. Okay, so this takes consistency. It takes practice. And it takes slowing down. It just takes slowing down. I hate cooking. Let's take that one. I hate cooking. Ugh. This makes me feel annoyed, repulsed, and slightly on edge. I feel that in my stomach. Level 9. I hate cooking. I love cooking. That feels okay. I cook because I am a healthy person. Boom. Or how about I don't have to cook? How about I look for alternative solutions to cooking because I'm a healthy person? You don't have to like doing something. Or I make cooking fun. There you go. I make cooking fun because I am a healthy person. How does that feel? Okay, guys, these are just examples. And now really the real work to be done is from you. So we've gone over core beliefs. Those take some time to shift, and just more so recognizing where they come from and how they're so ingrained in us. But the second step is changing your language. So if you know where your beliefs come from and you know that they're certainly implanting things into your head, and it's creating stories for you. And then let's deconstruct those stories. And trust me, there are some deeper ones in here. When it comes to severe obesity, man, some of the stories that lie at the epicenter of that could be fear of being loved, or fear of being wanted. And that fear, that story that you've told yourself about that fear of being desired or loved or touched, or of letting go, is holding you into obesity because you don't want to be attractive. These are deeper ones. These are deeper stories, but they can still be deconstructed the same way. You're going to write it out. You're going to read it. You're going to breathe. And then you're going to do it again. And you're going to slow everything down. So you write out that story. You read it. You breathe. How do you feel? Where do you feel at level 1 to 10? You're going to read it again, but 70% slower. You're going to breathe. You're going to feel it. And I bet you $1,000 you will find the answer within that of how you can change the story, and how what you've told yourself back then is no longer true, and there's a different meaning. There's a different outcome. Okay. This is why language is so important, guys. It shapes your whole life, shapes every action that you do, whether good, productive, or unproductive. I don't like good or bad. It's productive or unproductive. So if you're speaking to yourself in a certain way, and by all means, comment below what your language around nutrition has been. What are the phrases that you continually say to yourself? Let me help you deconstruct them, or you can share your phrases that you've deconstructed and share the wins, and let's help each other. We can ping pong off of each other. But before we go into how to do nutrition, which will be the next video, it's very important to get this language under wraps and to understand it at a deep level, and then be able to reconstruct it in order to work for you and not against you. This is language. This is part 2 of 3 in the nutrition series, and we're going to continue to move forward on fitness, mindset, spiritual health, and all of the things, guys. So stay tuned in this series. I love it. Check out more of the videos on my YouTube channel, of course, and the podcast, Ignite the Spark Within. And next time we'll be talking about language, how to do it. I'm sorry, nutrition, how to do it. So for whatever your goal is, how to do nutrition. So there's the meat and potatoes there. Hope you guys have a blessed day. I will talk to you very soon.